Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Funky Brain Podcast. My name is Dennis, and this is my Funky Brain. And today we have a fun, unique kind of situation here because we have a former husband and wife team who actually came together to write a book. One an addict, one the loved one of an addict, or used to be, but I won't get into that. I'll let them talk about that a little bit. But I want to let them talk about their struggle and their solution, since millions of couples and families are in the exact same situation, but they actually did something about it, and they came together as co-authors to write the book Addiction Rescue, the no BS guide to recovery. So that speaks my language. I like that no nonsense approach to everything. So Dana Golden and David Marion, how are you guys doing today?
Great, Dennis. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah.
Really well.
Awesome. So Dana is in Minnesota and David is in Florida, I believe, correct?
That's right.
Awesome. I want to know, how did you guys come together to write this? What inspired you to put this together and try to help people?
After David's and my tumultuous journey through marriage, children, addiction, divorce, bankruptcy, losing everything, David going to prison, and David can talk further about his story. But after his incarceration and during his incarceration, he started to find his redemption in changing his life, getting clean and sober, obviously, and really wanted to make a difference in the opioid crisis in this country. And he's now an interventionist, a life recovery coach, and a national public speaker talking on these things. I felt it was really important that we share our story, because so much of the time the addict is the one that's gets the help they need, and they aren't the only ones that are injured in the destruction of addiction. So there's the families of the addicts and the kids and the spouses and friends and coworkers, et cetera, et cetera. So I felt it was very important for us to share our story of hope, of finding redemption, of repairing relationships, because obviously David and I did not always have the relationship we do now. We're great with the kids. We have better relationships than ever as a family unit, even though we're not married anymore and we're not together in any sense other than we work together and fighting this fight together.
I love that. And I think it's so important for people to see that after active addiction, you can have a mature relationship. It's not like we're not bad people, we're sick people. I was reading through a couple of, through some of your book, and some of the things, I love some of the quotes that you have, right? And addiction is an equal opportunity destroyer, right? And I always heard a version of that I heard was alcohol is a great remover. It removes stains from clothes and furniture, and it removes furniture and relationships and houses and success and happiness. I just love how you guys are able to share the addiction and alcoholism story from both angles. So David, what are some of the ways that you approach this whole project here and the way when you work with people?
Well, it's interesting, Dennis, because the way I approach this project with Dana is understanding the other side of addiction. Because if the addict was afflicted, the family has been affected. And we all go through this process, I say, of recovery together, right? Alcoholism is a family disease, and the recovery is a journey together. Now, everyone has their journeys. And I often said, if you were married to an enabler and a codependent person like this, you'd be an addict too. But it really is interesting when I approach families today. I let them know that inevitably when the person who has the issue of substance use disorder, they recover, the family seems to lose their identity. And what I mean by that is the mom might be the codependent, the dad was the enabler, and everyone has a role in every family. It's just understood. There's a black sheep, there's the hero of the family, so on and so forth. And what happens, what I've seen, is that once the addict begins to tap into the spirit of recovery, they lose their place in life, the others. In other words, their identity was always taking care of the addict. Now the addict is taking care of themselves. They begin to act like a stuck pig in a pen. not knowing what to do or how to do it.
Yeah, great point. And the word that you said there was spirit, and approach that you guys take. And when I was looking this up, and it's like you focus on the body, mind, and spirit. And I think that that is so important, because I think that's what makes a whole person. And if any one of those is off a little bit, then everything's kind of off a little bit. And, you know, sometimes things are, you know, pretty close to perfect, and most of the time they're not. But I think as long as you're making an attempt to try to get these things in alignment, then things just go better. But I like how you talk about the body, mind, and spirit. It's so important to making a full recovery and having a productive and useful life as possible. So, Dana, how do you use those, and how do you drive those points home in this book?
Well, first of all, let's just talk about the fact that addiction, substance use disorder, really destroys all three areas of life, right? Your body, your mind, and your spirit. And like you said, I mean, all three of those really need to be in balance to be a whole person. We don't focus on any one type of recovery in the book, because there's no one-size-fits-all program, and some people will find it in different places, right? So that's not the important piece. Important piece is to get on a path and realize you have to heal the body, mind, and spirit. So some of those things we talk about is with the spirit, in a 12-step program, they call it God or a higher power, right? But just to tap into some kind of spirit that you can draw strength from. It could be nature. It could be a universal law of gravity. I mean, whatever you find that's greater than yourself, that can help you stay accountable, that you can find. We talk about that in the book, how to look for that. So that is the spirit. The mind, obviously, there's so much limited belief thinking in, you know, oh, I'm an addict, I'll never get this right. You know, you have your limited beliefs, right? And you have a lot of negative self-talk. You have to change those talk tracks. You know, we talk about in the book, you know, if you don't like you better start thinking positively about positive affirmations, because it's really, it sounds so hokey, positive affirmations, but it's so important, you know, on your journey to say, I can do this. You know, I'm getting better every day. I'm getting stronger all the time, you know, just to keep pumping yourself with the positive. And when the negative creeps in, you got to get it out as soon as you can. So that's how you heal the mind, right? You change into a positive mindset, change those limited beliefs of who you are, what you've been. And then the body, because addiction has reactions in the gut and in the brain. And if you don't do something to heal the gut, they send the messages to the brain that cause the cravings. You're going to suffer that way by having cravings and not feeling as whole as you can physically. So, and we talk about working out, but that's not, you know, the most important thing. The most important thing is gut health. So you can change that brain chemistry.
Sure.
So let's talk about that a second, Dennis. The importance of that is really eating for your emotional and spiritual being. So if you're going to eat this fast food, you're going to have burgers, fries, and shakes. Of course, you're going to feel lackadaisical, depressed, you know, riddled with anxiety, and because nothing is going right. When you're eating healthy and really watching what's going into your system, you begin to have that the consciousness eventually becomes a subconscious, right? We don't have to continually, ideally, watch everything we eat. We know. It's the same thing as staying sober, right? I don't have to consciously wake up anymore and think about drinking and thinking about not drinking. That obsession has been removed. And many people have to go through that obsessive compulsivity and learn how to disrupt it before they can remove it. And we talk about that in the book, the great power of obsession. How do we dismember and dismantle that? Well, eating right is one of the ways we begin to believe that.
We talk about in the book, and I find this so interesting, is that if you want to look at your self-worth, look at your diet, right? If you're eating dollar burgers at McDonald's, that's the value you're putting on yourself. So I love that correlation.
Yeah, I do too. And really well put. These are all beliefs that I share. In fact, I love talking to other people in recovery, or at least in our world, because we talk the same language. And I love that. And I love how you guys are tuned into how important it is to pay attention to what you're putting into your body. And, you know, there's so many parts that go into it. And I also think we make it difficult. Like a lot of it's the media and what we hear. It's like, do this diet. Don't do that. You're going to hurt. No, do this diet. Do this diet. So people get overwhelmed and confused and they don't know what to do. And really it's like, you know what's good and what's not good. You know, eat some more vegetables, drink as much water as you can. You're not going to overdrink water. You can, but you're not going to, right? So don't worry about it and go for some walks. Don't worry about like beating that guy at CrossFit or doing all these things. And I've been in that. I have that competitive, addictive, personality too. Sometimes I have to reel it in a little bit, but it's like, go for some walks, start to feel better about yourself. And then you can start making decisions like, I want to be an Olympic lifter or something like that. But I just love how you guys have been able to come together and share these messages. So for those families or couples that are struggling and just feeling hopeless and that there's no way out, whether it's just an individual or as a family or couple, what advice can you give them to get like on the right path or to start to ask for help and to get where like somebody like you guys were able to get to?
What you said in the beginning is it's so important to separate the person from the addiction, right? And you're in the relationship with this person because you value something about that person and you fell into a relationship with them. So you really have to go back to that person is still there, but this disease of addiction has taken over. And that's the part you don't like. It's not the person, it's the disease, right? So learning to separate that is so ultimately important. And then, finding somebody that can help you. I mean, whether it's therapy, counseling, a friend, I mean, you have to reach out. You can't sit in it alone. There is hope. There is ways to repair those relationships. That's why there's professionals out there like David that's an interventionist to get help for the addict, and then he can turn them on to somebody to get help for the family so everybody can find their own journey together.
Yeah, I agree. And an important thing you said, at least in my thing that I like to drive home all the time, is we can't do everything by ourselves. And I don't want to do everything by myself. Like my intuition, as Dennis and addictive personality person is like, again, well, first of all, recognize that the harmful behavior, the drinking, drugs, smoking, whatever it is, it's not the problem. It's what I'm using to cope with my problem, which is my thinking, my funky brain. That's the name of the Funky Brain podcast, right? So my funky brain is my problem. And my funky brain tells me when something gets off, whatever that is, whether it's a big thing or a little thing, I'm going to go sit in a room by myself and try to figure it out by myself. And that's where I get in trouble. So I love how you said, reach out for help. Like, I don't have to do everything by myself. And now I'm in a place in my life where I don't want to do everything by myself. Isn't it cool? Like, I was taught, have a professional in every area of your life. So if I have to go to court, I need a lawyer. If I get sick, I need a doctor. So I don't know how to get sober by myself or clean. So I need to reach out to somebody. Or my partner is the addict and I don't know how to handle them. I need to reach out for help. So I love how you guys have been able to do that. So David, tell us some of the techniques that you use when you're helping people in recovery.
Well, first of all, what you said is really important because I often let them know you don't have a drinking problem. You have a thinking problem, right? And some of the principles that we talk about in early recovery, the three most important ones, which are completely thrown out the window when we're using, are humility, responsibility, and accountability. And that all ties into the previous conversation with food and all of that. Accountable for what we eat, how we eat, accountable for, all the actions in my life I'm responsible for because every decision leads to a consequence, good and bad. So when you ask how do it tie into the people that I'm working with, it's an interesting concept because when you're dealing with people really struggling in the throes of addiction, they don't see a way out. Addiction is a disease of isolation and loneliness, and the antidote is commitment to community. Let's talk about the pandemic that we're in, where people are lonely, they're isolating, they're self-medicating. How do they become a part of in these times? How do they reach out for help and get on that Zoom call with, 60 people they don't know? How do they pick the 400-pound phone up and say, help, I'm really scared, I'm fearful, I'm isolating. I want to get high. And this is all part of it. It's about being able to rip this stuff from the roots inside rather than pull little leaves off the tree and expect to recover. We got to go down there and cleanse this stuff and cleanse and cleanse. And it's all part of inventorizing. This pandemic, there was an epidemic before the pandemic, right? So now we're dealing with the pandemic that's going on, and people in addiction, where a lot of the treatment facilities have changed the way they're doing business. Everything is pretty much virtual now. Outpatient services, even the inpatient is done virtually, in your dorms, not going to the theaters to watch live speakers. So when you're really struggling in something like these times, the important thing is to ask for help. But as an addict, we don't want to ask for help. I don't know you, but I know that if when you would help anybody do anything there was. The hardest thing we have to do is ask somebody to say, would you please help me? I'm struggling in my recovery. I don't know what to do. Because you talked about the funky brain. That funky brain is telling me I can handle all of this stuff, which is my disease. We have a disease that wants us dead or live with a lifetime of misery. So now I have to overcome that, right? And through that process, it's a shattering process, a disrupting process.
Great, powerful stuff. I love the way you put everything together there. So now, Dana, from your side of things, what's a good thing that you can tell people that are struggling as the enablers or the loved ones of addicts, alcoholics? What can they do? What steps do you think that they should take to start on their path of recovery? Because it is a recovery on their side too.
Absolutely. And the first thing you have to do is stop being responsible for the addict, right? You didn't cause it, you can't cure it. The 3 C's, right? Didn't cause it, can't control it, can't cure it. Not your job. And you have to get to a place, and it's a journey, to where no matter what the addict is doing, how they're acting out, you're safe and you're comfortable in your spot. And you don't have to hook into the good, the bad, the ugly that they're doing. That's not your responsibility. You get to stay sane whether they're acting insane or not. And of course, it's much easier said than done. But that's truly the essence of not being an enabler, is to just, put a invisible wall between you and them. They get to write their own story. You get to write yours. And that's the first thing you got to focus on. It's just not hooking into it. You're not the watchdog. It's not your job to identify if they're drinking too much, or they had one too many, or they're going to the refrigerator too many times. It's not your job to be the watchdog over all of that. And if they see the problem, they can't help the addict. They don't understand how the funky brain of the addict works. So trying to step in and give them advice or, give them their perspective, it doesn't work. They have a completely different perspective as a normie, right, than somebody that has an addicted brain. So they need to reach out and they need to get help so that they can stay sane, but also find help for the addict, because their job is not going to be able, that's not their job to be able to help them.
Right. And one thing I like to say to people that are in these positions is that you have to take care of yourself. But there's a difference between taking care of yourself and being selfish. And I think it's a duty for all of us really to take care of ourselves. Otherwise, you can't be useful to other people. How do you continue to stay positive in this crazy world that's throwing out negativity and stay together through tough times and challenges and have this common purpose of helping people?
One word.
Money.
Gratitude.
Oh.
Gratitude. Complete gratitude, because I know I should have been dead a long time ago for the drinking, the driving, the drugs I ingested. And it's almost this, they rolled the dice and said, you're on house money. I am going for the gusto. And I wake up every day and I say, thank you. He gave me another day. 2 things you were talking about before, being selfish, right? The program of recovery is based off of selfishness and selflessness. I have to take care of myself, but at the same time, the more I make my life about other people, the better I get to feel. When you asked Dana before, what is a major one thing you do when the addict is going through this? They create this new leverage consequences with the word called boundaries. We are going to create boundaries around this home that we're going to adhere to. Because when we're using, every boundary gets shattered. We keep drawing the line further and further in the sand until eventually we're underwater. So a lot of that all ties in. And when you look at all the components of selfishness, selflessness, boundaries, right? We put them together and we begin to become grateful for each day that we have. And when you're more grateful for what you have and you're closer to your higher power than you're drinking and drugging, you're going to have a good day. But when I wake up and I'm depressed and all I'm thinking about is the past, I'm riddled with resentment and depression because I'm living in the past, or I have anxiety and fear because I'm thinking about tomorrow, something hasn't happened, I'm not living in today. When I begin to live in today, I get clarity and freedom, and I begin to understand the true meaning of happiness.
Awesome. Well put. Powerful stuff. We're going to take a quick break here, and then we'll come back in a little bit and continue talking with David and Dana. So you can't think your way into a new way of acting. You have to act your way into a new way of thinking and being. Hi, I'm Dennis Berry, best-selling author, speaker, and life coach for addiction recovery. So many people are stuck in their addiction, whether it's like drugs or alcohol or food or shopping or sex or money, and they think they could just stop or try to figure it out on their own, but they don't change anything in their lives. Nothing changes if nothing changes. In order for change to happen, you have to change something. My clients will be like, oh, I'll stop tomorrow, or if this happens, then I stop, or someday I'll just give it up. And then they just sit around and think, and hope for different or better results, but it doesn't happen. You have to take action. Action most people aren't willing to take. People don't become willing until they're in enough pain, me included. And unfortunately, they wait, and time passes by. Even if you are willing, you don't even know where to begin. And that's where I come in. In my best-selling book, Funky Wisdom, A Practical Guide to Life, I talk about the how approach. How do I get sober? How do I stop doing drugs? How do I become healthier? How do I have more successful relationships? How do I become more financially successful? And the answer is how. Honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. I have to honestly admit that there's a problem. I have to honestly admit that things aren't going well and there needs to be changes. And then once I do that, the door opens and I become open to seeing new ways of living. And then I become willing to make those changes. You can't solve a problem with the same mind that created it. That's why I'm here to help. And, you know, I've been working with clients for over 15 years and helping them get clean and sober and change their lives and achieve inner peace and success. If you or somebody you love is struggling and doesn't know where to begin and how to make those changes to get to where they need to be, give me a call. Not tomorrow or in a week from now when you're hungover and your life is falling apart. Call now. Start making that change today, and you'll be glad that you did. I'm sending you love and good vibes. Have a great day today. Welcome back, everybody. And once again, we're talking with Dana Golden and David. We are going to talk a little bit about their lives because there is life after the addiction and the problems, the families falling apart. And so David, Marion has, his website is The Life Recovery Coach, and Dana is danagolden.com. And they both have these productive lives, and I'm going to let them tell you a little bit about that. So Dana, you want to go first?
David and I married, had 2 kids together. They're now 24 and 22. We went through the whole family process of addictions, navigating kids through that process, getting them the help they needed at young ages so they understood it wasn't a reflection of them, that they weren't responsible for their dad's addictive behavior. Got help for myself in that process. David got help, got clean and sober. But by the time he did that, we were already divorced. We had gone through multiple issues financially and eventually bankrupted everything. And David can tell you in his story, but ended up going to prison. So came back together to write the book, as we talked about earlier. But when David went to prison, I became financially responsible for myself and the children for the first time. We had a business together. David had the business in our marriage, in our divorce. He got the business, but there was ample money to support both sides of the family. But when he went to prison, all of that went away, obviously. So it was, my journey for myself and my children to not let their dads consequences affect us. And my thing with my girls has always been, a man is not a plan, and we're survivors, or we're thrivers, and we will get through this. And we're not going to let your dad take us down, because that's where his place was. That's not where our place is. So I opened my own business. I did what I had to do. I worked multiple jobs, got my kids through high school, and put them both through college. They're both graduated now. So while David was in prison. So it's so important for these families of these addicts to understand that they aren't dependent on them. We go into these relationships being dependent on these addicts that are really undependable. We have to find that strength to depend only on ourselves, and be selfish to take care of our kids in some cases, or sometimes it's parents, whoever it is. We have to stand on our own 2 feet. And those are big lessons that anybody involved with an addict needs to understand.
Yeah, and I want to get to David in just a second. But one thing I want to talk about here for those that are listening, whatever side you're on, whatever you're going through, is I want you to listen to the honesty about this. Because a lot of these things like you're talking about and you're sitting here talking about together, those are huge hurdles for people to overcome. And they're not willing to be this honest and open, especially on a video, about the real problems that drove you apart and how you were able to come together and how you dedicate your lives now to helping other people. So I appreciate it and admire both of you, your honesty. So David, tell us a little bit about your side there and about what you're doing now with your recovery coach.
Well, yeah, Dana touched on a bit of it. I was a Wall Street guy, a stockbroker years ago, sales manager of a brokerage firm back in the 80s. And there was an intervention done on me. And September 1st, 1989, they sent me on a one-way ticket from New York City to Center City, Minnesota. At the time, they said I was doing too much cocaine. And I said, my God, you guys aren't doing enough. It's hard for you to relate.
I'm on your side. Yeah, nobody does enough of that stuff. I always say, what I said about cocaine was like, I never liked cocaine. I just like the way it smells.
That's right. Exactly. Right. And, there's so many things that we liked about it. Going to the ATM, getting more money, staying up all night, not being able to talk and sleep. So I ended up coming up here. And after I went through 30 days, I ended up doing another 3 months in a halfway house. I went through Hazleton, which is now Hazleton Betty Ford. And I made a life up here. And shortly after, probably within my first 3 years of recovery, I met Dana. We soon got married and had 2 daughters, and it started a very successful gold and silver brokerage firm. Life was grand. We were doing beyond the wildest of our imagination, making more money than we ever dreamed of. But as we look back at it, life was an outside job then, right? How much we're banking on Friday, what kind of car we're driving. And we're dying on the inside because we know there's this huge pink elephant in the living room that we're dancing around, and it's called the relationship. And once you begin to dissect it and look back, you could see you go through the period of no wonder whys. And those no wonder whys are quite insightful. I was sober about 13, 14 years. Going to meetings, I had a sponsor. I sponsored a lot of men, very active in service, started speaking regularly. And I had a bunch of knee surgeries because in college I played basketball. I was what we call a first generation opioid guy. When the pharmaceutical companies weren't telling us the effects of these opioids and prescription pills, that they were addicting and there was an overdose attached if you continued. And the first prescription I got for a knee surgery was 180 pills. I took 2 of them and I called my doctor immediately because I had that euphoric recall of doing Quaaludes in the 70s and being at Studio 54, and I knew I wanted more. I said, Doc, you're never going to believe it. I'm going to the bathroom. I opened up the pill bottle and they all spilled down. And he said, David, I'll write you another prescription. He had written me 180 pills the first time. Within 3 or 4 years of that, kept going pretty hard. I knew I had lost interest in a lot of things except getting high. One day I ran out of pills and I was in so much pain. A guy said I could help you. He came over to my apartment. I had been separated from Dana at the time. He laid out a line, said, don't ask any questions. Now I'm hooked on heroin. And this went on for about another year and a half. And eventually I bankrupted a multi-million-dollar company. Dana and I got divorced, and I was sentenced to 60 months in federal prison for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, bank fraud, and money laundering. We had done a public offering in 2007 because the stock market was going down and gold and silver had an adverse effect and business was great. We were going to go take the company public on the exchange. And it was just a series of unfortunate incidences that were involved. I hired 2 guys to raise money. You know, I'm traveling the country doing my thing. And at the end of the day, I took full responsibility for what happened. And I went to prison for 36 months, 11 days, 7 hours, and 6 minutes. And that's where I found my redemption, though, Dennis. I really did, because when you're sitting in a box, you have a lot of introspective work to do. I was one of 4 inmates out of 1,000 that got to leave the institution to go speak at business ethic conferences, corporate events, colleges, high schools, and get to share my story with them. I would always get to take a few guys, and I always took a couple of these high-ranking gang members from Chicago who wanted to do the same thing. It was impactful, because when you come from 2 different walks of life and you get to know somebody beneath the color of their skin and how your 2 worlds collide in a small little gated community like this, you begin to transcend and transform yourself. And we start thinking and hearing about other stories, and we know that we know where we are, but we don't know how to get to where we want to be. And it's that process. I often say the 2 greatest days of our life, the day we're born and the day we realize why we're born. But we don't get to figure out why we're born until we tap into the spirit of recovery. And once I found my gift, I found my purpose. And I realized that I love doing what I'm doing. And as a result, I became an interventionist. I was certified as an interventionist and a life recovery coach. I'm blessed to have many speaking opportunities around this country. I was a guy that was really active in the opioid epidemic, and still am. We passed the first opioid stewardship bill in the state of Minnesota, and I watched bipartisanship come together for the first time and get this legislative piece passed on the House Bill 400, opioid stewardship bill, where a Republican senator and a Democratic senator came together for a mutual cause. They each lost a child to an overdose, by an opioid overdose. It was an incredible process, sitting in St. Paul, Minnesota, in the Capitol for 9 months, and really being involved, testifying in front of Senate subcommittee hearings. And as a result, 12 other states have taken our lead, and they're following what we're doing, and they're trying to enact their same bill. I've since done documentaries for PBS, and I just finished one with the Center for Disease Control that'll be out this summer. So I'm staying really active, and, you know, being on the front line fighting addiction is my gift in life.
I love it. Yeah, thanks for sharing all that. So tell me, I want to hear from both of you, some of the challenges that you faced after you made the decisions to have normal or successful lives.
You know, there's a reason struggle comes before success in the dictionary, right? And one of my favorite lines that I say quite often is that life is not about our successes and accomplishments, but rather it's about overcoming adversity. Every person has adversity in life. How do we bridge the gap between this huge problem into the solution? Many people are stuck in the problem and they can't figure out what the solution is. When you tap into the solution, it does create happiness, right? And it does create wealth. It might not, for instance, be financial wealth. It might be different types of wealth, where financial insecurity will completely leave us. We don't have to worry like we did when we were out there using, because we know we haven't missed a meal today. I haven't missed a meal. I have a roof over my head. But we don't think like that and break it down to the simplicity of life. And I think that's when we begin to do that, and you bring down to the simplicity and understanding of moment by moment, day by day, bit by bit. Life does take on a new meaning. And I used to say that if I'm successful, I will be happy. And I've changed that. If I'm happy, I'm successful, right?
Yeah.
We have a choice. You know, I didn't choose to become an addict, but I did choose my recovery. Part of the recovery is my happiness on a daily basis. And I'm not, I'm a guy who's pretty light. I don't take a lot doesn't really get to me. And I think part of that is understanding, which I studied in prison, cognitive behavior therapy. And what that deals with is moving an irrational thought to a rational belief. And once you get rid of that irrational thought, the problem dissipates. And I'll give you a quick example. If a guy and girl are traveling on the highway and they cut me off in my car, right? And all of a sudden, my first thought is to separate his head from his shoulder. Irrational thought. The rational belief is, you selfish, self-centered son of a gun, maybe the woman in the car is pregnant and they're trying to get to the hospital. The whole problem is diminished because I'm thinking about somebody else. I get out of myself, and all of a sudden, as one of the co-founders of Alcoholics Anonymous, Bill Wilson, used to say, it begins to melt like snow in June, the problem. And it's gone. Poof, it's gone.
Yeah, a change of thinking. It's not always that the problem is different or the world is different. It's my perception of the world.
And Dana can talk more about that. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
What I'm thinking of is two ways to look at a situation, right? If you're in the middle, standing in the middle of the ocean and a big wave is coming at you, you can go, oh my God, that's going to kill me. I'm going to die. That thing is so scary. Or you can go, wow, what a cool wave. I'm going to try to ride that wave and I'm going to adventure and I'm going to have so much fun with it, right? So it's all about the way you think about a situation. And I had to do that over and over when I have to come up with a job, because now I got to pay my own bills. I don't have this company anymore that's going to pay them, right? My kids, for the first time, I'm not going to be there when they get home from school or maybe even when they take off, because I got to go to work now, right? So it's different adjustments for everybody. But it's like, you know what, guys, it's not going to be bad. It's just going to be different, right? And that's my perspective all the time. It's just going to be different. It's not bad. It's just different. That's the way you got to look at it. Everything's an adventure. Everything shall pass. And everything is going to be okay, because it always has been okay.
That's right. Awesome. Thank you so much, guys, for being with me today. So again, we've been talking with David and Dana, and they're the co-authors, Addiction Rescue, the No BS Guide to Recovery. So tell us, how can we contact you? How can we buy that book if we wanted to? I think it's on Amazon.
Type in Addiction Rescue. It'll come right up. Also, if you go to the website, theliferecoverycoach.com, there's a link. You can just click it. It'll take you right to buy the book. Also, on the website is a free downloadable workbook. I think you said you took a look at that. Yeah, so you can work a workbook right alongside of reading the book. And very helpful, gives you places to answer. Every chapter has thoughtful questions at the end, exercises, really thought-provoking. And the workbook just helps guide you through that, gives you space to write it out. So download both, go click the link, theliferecoverycoach.com. My danagolden.com also has the same links, so to the book and to the workbook.
Thank you so much, guys, David, Dana, for being with me today. And maybe we'll do it again sometime soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dennis, very much for the opportunity.
Really great, Dennis. Thank you so much for your insight as well.
Thank you. We'll talk to you soon. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for watching the Funky Brain Podcast.